Jason Fried, we are finally live. How you doing? It's good to see you.
It's great to see you. It's been a while. It's great to see you again.
It has been a while. It's been too long. The last time we were going to connect, I think you were in Amsterdam and you couldn't find it. It's probably 3G back then, maybe 4G. It's amazing how things have changed, especially over the 6 months, right?
Yeah, for real. It's a lot is changing right now.
A lot's changing. And that's why I wanted to have you on tonight to talk about change, to talk about your approach to building a business, to designing a life. And for those of you that don't know Jason Fried, he's the co-founder and CEO of Basecamp and the brand new HEY email platform and service, which is one of the reasons we have Jason on tonight. I can't wait to talk about HEY. I'm loving it, Jason. He's also the co-author of Getting Real, of Rework, which is a great book most of you have read, Remote, and his latest piece of work, It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work, which has been my philosophy for 34 years, Jason, so I can totally relate to that. For those of you not familiar with Basecamp, it's a project management and team collaboration cloud-based platform that's used by millions of people worldwide with several thousand new signups each and every week. So I think that really says it all. Jason, why don't we just dive right in? Your new email platform, HEY, HEY.com. What's it all about? Why did you do it? And why do all of my viewers need to jump on and give it a try?
Yeah, well, thanks. So HEY is it's kind of a labor of love because we use email every day, and I've been emailing for 30 years, and it feels like the last time people got excited about email was 16 years ago. 2004 was when Gmail came out. And I remember when that came out and everyone was pumped up and Gmail was this brand new thing and everyone's waiting to get an invite and it was really different and interesting. And then time stood still, basically. I mean, the world moved forward and email just sort of got stuck in the past. And we got frustrated by that. We said that email is actually a wonderful thing, but we all kind of hate it. Like, why do we hate it? Well, we hate it because we're overwhelmed by it. We have no control over it. There's no real workflows built into email apps. There's just workarounds. Everyone's hacking their way through every day and feeling like they're overwhelmed. There's got to be a better way to do this. Something that we have to deal with every day needs to be better. It just deserves to be better. And email is also one of the great last open platforms in technology. Everything else is owned by someone else, basically, right? We all like Twitter, but Twitter's owned by Twitter, and Instagram's owned by Facebook, and Facebook's owned by Facebook. And email is not owned by anybody. It's open, which is great. So
well, but you noticed that. See, to me, I think email was already covered. It was like I'm thinking Gmail, I'm thinking Outlook, but just the way you look at this stuff, you're like, there's some open territory. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's the mindset we're talking about, you guys, is how you approach these things. I'm sorry, Jason.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned it because it has been considered a solved problem, which is why it hasn't been innovated upon for a decade and a half almost. So we sat down and said, like, what frustrates us about this thing, email? And it's like, well, number one, I get emails from people I don't want to hear from all day long. Because it used to be that you'd give your email address out to somebody and that was the only person then who had it. But now your email address has been bought and sold and traded and posted online. It's everywhere. So like you don't control that anymore. So with every other email app, basically anyone can get in touch with you, which might be good, but it's usually not. So with HEY, the first thing is that you have to opt people in to be able to communicate with you. You have to say yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down to everybody who sends you an email for the first time. And this way you begin to control the spigot. You begin to control how many emails are coming in, who you're hearing from. And after you use this for a few weeks, you're only hearing from people you want to hear from. And that is a huge burden off your shoulders. So that's where it starts. And then we have workflows around things that people deal with every day. Let me just give you one as an example. You get an email from someone, it's 4 o'clock, you don't have time to get back to them right now. You know you need to get back to them though, but you don't have time. So what do? Well, most people, like, they do one of a few things. They either mark that email unread so they don't lose it. They star it or pin it or flag it. They might snooze it. They might put it in a folder. We're all doing these workarounds. Everyone has different systems and the systems aren't really right, but that's all we can do. So with HEY, we have a feature called reply later. Like, oh, I need to get back to this person later. Hit reply later. It then puts it into a little pile. And that pile is kind of out of your way, but you know where it is. And you can get back to it later. And then you can go into what's called focus and reply mode, where you can just knock out every email that's in your reply later pile all at once in one focused view. It's just like, I'm giving you one feature, but the point is that we looked at this stuff from first principles and said, like, how do we do this every day? Why does it suck? How can it not suck? How can we bring some real innovation here? And we did that across 20 or 30 different features. So that's sort of what HEY is all about. And the other thing I'll just end with this on this point is that email is dominated. Basically, the top 4 players, which is it's Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, and then Apple, basically own 80% of the email market. So the email market's owned by basically 4 big tech companies. And there's only really 2 independents. There's Fastmail and ProtonMail, and now there's HEY. So if you don't want your email to be consumed by big tech, mining it, selling you ads, taking all this personal information out for their own benefit, not really for yours, use something like HEY or Fastmail or ProtonMail and take control again.
What I like is the privacy aspect of HEY, Jason, because I don't want people looking in directly or indirectly via algorithms as to my confidential client communications. And I think a big time saver with HEY, and something I've already shared with my community, is you can set it up where when you pay an invoice, your invoices that come in go to one thread. Your newsletters, your updates that we all subscribe to, but we never really want to have in our primary email inbox are assigned to another thread. I think there's 3 primary threads, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. There's the inbox. So we don't even have an inbox. We have what's called an inbox with an M. And I can talk about that in a minute. We have the inbox for important emails from people you really care about. We've got the feed, which is for newsletters. And the way you read the feed is that all the emails are open and you just read them. Just like you'd read a Facebook feed or Twitter feed or LinkedIn, they're open. You don't have to click on each one and open it and click on the next one and open it. They're open. You just scroll through like a newspaper. And then we have something called the paper trail, which is where all the receipts go and confirmations. And to your point, HEY doesn't decide where these things go. You tell HEY where they go, and then HEY will follow your lead. So if you say this contact, whenever this contact sends me an email, I always want them to go to the paper trail, then they will from that point on. So there's no algorithm, there's no AI, there's no fancy anything deciding what's worthwhile looking at and what isn't. Because on paper, that sounds like a great thing. But what happens is that Google now decides what's important to you. They decide what emails you should see. They decide who's promotional and who's not. Like, I don't want Google making those decisions for me. I can make my own decisions. And especially when I get to decide who can get to me in the first place. So anyway, there's a lot of things in there that they're radically different, and it's about time. Basically, it's like we got to save time, we got to get our attention back, and we got to have control over who can get in touch with us, and that's where it all starts.
You did a great intro video that people in my community have used as a model with how to communicate, how to build rapport. While you're explaining HEY.com, you're actually showing everyone how to communicate in a way that more lawyers and professionals need to communicate. One where you're speaking from the heart, you're actually walking us through the program. And one of the big challenges, Jason, is that a lot of us have our email accounts set up already, for example, over at Gmail. Is there an easy way to make that transition so that we can, especially right now, we all have a little bit extra time. This is a great time to make the transition to accommodate that.
Yes, there is. And I'm going to get you a link here, and I'll pop it in the chat because we did a whole page on this. In fact, hang on.
And I'll share your links. I've got some of these, just so you know. I'll share them across social.
Oh, cool. Let me just grab it really quick. But I'll talk about it for a second here, and then I'll explain it. So the main thing is that HEY is interesting in that it's a moment to try something new. So I'll get this link for you in a minute. Otherwise, I'll be
no worries.
So email, we've all amassed like a decade or 2 or 3 decades of email. That's just like this big, big, like, shoot. If you can imagine it printed out, it would be like this 1,000 suitcases of emails, right? And if you're going to move into a new house, like, do you really need to bring 1,000 suitcases with you with every piece of communication you've ever had? Like, actually, probably not. And in fact, it'd be a massive burden. So with Hey, it's really about a fresh start. You don't get many fresh starts in life. And it's kind of a nice moment to say, look, I'm not going to bring the last 10 or 20 years of communication with me. That stuff can stay where it is. I can export it from Google if I want and keep it locally on my own computer. But like, I don't need to bring that with me into a new service and have this baggage, because the truth is, and everyone knows this, is like most old email is just not useful anymore. It's just old email. There's, of course, a handful of things that are really important, and you can go find those when you need them wherever they were before, and you can forward those into Hey if you want to keep them in Hey. You can also set up forwarding from Gmail. That way, if someone emails you at your old Gmail address, it'll show up in Hey. So you don't have to
that's what we've done.
Yeah, you don't have to tell like thousands of people your new email address. They'll eventually figure it out, but you don't lose anything there. So it's a gradual transition, but it's a fundamental mind shift. It says like, I don't need to bring everything with me from forever with me. It's just not worth it. So for some people, it's a deal breaker, and we understand that. But I really invite people to just kind of let go of the past when it comes to email. And frankly, I think it's actually a significant liability to have 10 years of your communication history pulled with, or 10 or 20 or 30 pulled with you forever. When it becomes 50 or 60 or 70 years over your lifetime, like, you don't really want that hanging around, do you?
Yeah, well, look who you're talking to. You're talking to a trial lawyer. So yes, e-discovery, it's a big deal. So when, 2001 was when we set up our Gmail account. We've been in business since 86, right?
Yep.
But there's a lot of data there. And I guess what I was getting at also is, in addition to be able to save everything like Jason just described, just for CYA purposes, right? To confirm agreements, things like this, you can also easily just forward your existing Gmail account into Hey, which is what we did, Jason.
Correct.
And it works really, really well. You guys, this involves a new mindset, right? And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have Jason on is to talk about his mindset. And as we get into the conversation a little bit more deeper, you'll see what I'm talking about. I also want everyone to know that we're going to respect top of the hour, 6 o'clock. We're out of here. We've got a couple other things that we each want to do. And but I do want to invite you guys to share your questions, share your comments. I am monitoring over in the admin panel, and I will get to everybody's questions if I can. Once again, we are speaking with Jason Fried, the co-founder of Basecamp and Hey, and author of several fantastic books. His latest, It Doesn't Have to Be Crazy at Work. That's right, lawyers and doctors and CPA. It doesn't have to be crazy at work. Okay, here's something that immediately connected me with you back in the day. And I think we go all the way back to either Spree 2011 or 12, Spreecast or Blab or something, whatever it was.
Right.
I'm sitting in the backyard. Remember, I was sitting in the backyard and you're like, what is this video thing? And that is how much you hate meetings, how much you hate unnecessary meetings. Talk to us a little bit about meetings, whether we need them, and what are some alternative approaches to avoiding these unnecessary meetings, which I can't stand.
Okay, so my take is that a meeting is basically the last resort. It's not that you should never, ever have them, but it's that it should be on the chain of events, the last resort. Primary thing is, first of all, in most cases, why are you getting to get, like, why do you feel like you need to call a meeting? Because a meeting is a huge distraction. It pulls everybody off their work at the same time, and it's quite costly. And if you think about it this way, 5 people, 6 people in a meeting for an hour, it's not a 1 hour meeting, it's a 6 hour meeting. 6 hours of work time has been taken up, 6 individual hours, to discuss something that probably could have been written up or maybe discussed among 2 people or 3 people and then summarized for the rest. Like, there's all these different variations on disseminating information, on making decisions, on communicating, versus having to basically stop work, pull everyone off to sit in a room to talk about something. And so occasionally at Basecamp, we do have meetings, but they're very rarely more than 3 people. And they're not blocked out for an hour. They're usually 15 or 30 minutes max. Because what ends up happening is if you block an hour, you fill an hour. That's just kind of how it goes. So small teams, rarely do we meet, but when we do, it's 3 people or fewer, and they're short. Now, what do we do instead? People are like, well, how do you communicate? How do you make decisions? Well, we use Basecamp. Of course, we make Basecamp, but whatever it is that you're using, we primarily write things down in long form. So we're big believers in asynchronous communication. So not real time. Real time's handy sometimes, but you don't want everything to be real time, because then you're just, again, distracting people all day long. What you want to do is you want to write things up, complete thoughts, post them somewhere. We post them in Basecamp, and then give people time to think it over and respond. What we've lost these days is a moment for people to think, to take a pause, to take a beat and think. Right now, with all the tech we have, which is great, but it also causes a lot of reactionary responses.
Absolutely.
And people don't even get to think. Like, I may have spent 2 days thinking about what I want to communicate, but because I might throw it into a chat room, everyone else is sort of expected to respond immediately. It's kind of unfair to the other people. So we kind of walk slowly. We write things up in detail, post it, and have a discussion over a matter of days. Now, if it's urgent, that's a different story, but most things shouldn't be urgent. Shouldn't be urgent.
And I love how you stress that, rather than focusing on real time, you focus on slow time. And if you think about it, meetings actually emphasize a real time, we've got to make a decision right now type of situation, and or it's ego stroking somebody who's taking up everybody else's time, as opposed to the power of slow time. Talk to us a little bit, because I think this applies to law firms, how important it is for you to have a team that knows how to write well and write clearly and be concise. I understand that's an important factor when you're hiring.
Yeah, it's aside from the fundamental skills to fill the role, writing is the next thing on our list, basically. Everybody at Basecamp has to be an outstanding writer. Because if you're a good writer, you're typically a good thinker. You're able to communicate clearly across a broad organization without having to repeat yourself 4 or 5 times to make your point. Or you might say the wrong thing the wrong way. Everyone else goes in one direction, and you don't realize till 2 months later that you didn't mean it that way. You meant it a different way, but you didn't explain it well. So writing is one of those things that I think it's one of the best ways to improve an organization, period, is to just step up everyone's writing skills. Because there's less miscommunication. Here's the thing. Companies don't have communication problems. They have miscommunication problems. And miscommunication typically comes from I would say poor communication, obviously, but poorly written communication. People reading something, thinking it meant one thing, but it meant something else. Other people perceiving the same writing in different ways, or someone not filling in the right details, or leaving too much ambiguity out there. Like, you really have to think about how to frame an argument or frame a decision or frame a point and make it in a way where everyone who reads it understands it and might have some questions, but the questions are to clarify. They're not like, what do you mean? Like, I don't get this, that kind of thing. If people are responding like, I don't get it, then it's a writing problem. It's not really even a thinking. I mean, there might be some thinking problems there too, but it's also oftentimes a writing problem. So it's really important to us. It's super important to us. And we write primarily, again, long form. We write a lot. We write thousands and thousands and thousands of words. I mean, probably like a lot of lawyers do, thousands and thousands of words, a week. We're essentially writing books through our communication all the time. And it's really important. And here's the thing. When you get a chance to write something up, you get to share a complete thought. One of the problems with chat-based communication is that you're writing one line at a time. You're thinking one line at a time. And people can just jump in the middle of your thought before you have a chance to even like make your point. And then you're like battling back the floor. You want to get the floor back, but you kind of can't because now everyone's jumped in. When you get to share an idea, 6 paragraphs, 600 words, whatever it is, and you get to put that out there, you get to present your complete thought. And that's a really powerful thing. And it's a great way to communicate internally.
Sometimes when we're in, it's not slow time, it's real time chat with opposing counsel or judges. Sometimes I feel like I'm a hamster on a little running wheel, or maybe somebody like I Love Lucy on an assembly line. Things are going by so fast, it's hard to keep track of what's happening. And I think the context gets lost. The message can easily get confused. And I've noticed with big law, with senior managing partners communicating to their team, when that's done in a email thread over the course of 2 weeks, as opposed to a focused, detailed internal blog post, for example, where everyone can go and everyone can find the answer. Everyone can click on the links and the solutions. I know that's something you guys do at Basecamp based upon your books.
Yeah.
But that's a huge time saver, and it helps people avoid mistakes.
The other thing about it that's great about centralizing your communication in long form is that it's wonderful for new employees. A new employee joins a company, and if they want to get to know how the company communicates, like what it's like to work here, how decisions are made, why were certain decisions made, they can go back and read well-written essays, essentially, or chapters about the company's history, versus like trying to read a chat transcript over 3 months. It's just complete chaos. You wouldn't even attempt to do it. No. But when things are written up with subjects that make sense, that you can go find something and read the entire original post and all the comments about it and all the decisions and whatever, you get to understand like how things work here. And that's really valuable for the future. A lot of people communicate only with the present in mind. They're trying to make a decision and then they rush through it with 6 people and it's haphazard, but they forget that this is an organization and you want to build a certain knowledge base over time and a consistency and reasons why you do things. And you're going to hire new people over the years, and you want them to be able to absorb the way you think and write and act and decide and everything. And having this written history is wonderful. It's just like society evolves historically when you have written history, not verbal history. Verbal history is great, like way back before writing. Obviously, that's all we had. But it gets like munged pretty quickly from one generation to the next. You get myths and like things that never happened in the whole thing. But when people write stuff down, and then communication can be passed through generations, and it's the same communication, then you get this consistency and this ability to build upon a foundation which is shared by everybody. It's a wonderful thing to do.
Do you mind if I share some real-time questions with you as they come in? Since we're on live video, we might as well. This is relevant. Professor Nicholas Meir, who teaches over at Chapman University, just a fascinating human being. In fact, I think the world of Nicholas, Jason, because he was kind enough to hire my son this summer to help him with the website.
Awesome.
But Nicholas asked a good question. And does that apply, if you know, to other countries?
I don't have a good answer for that one.
It's a great question.
It really is. And I'm not the right person to answer that. All I can say is that we have employees all over the world who work for us, but primarily in Western countries. So I don't know if there's any differences in Eastern cultures. So I'm not the right person to ask, but that's a good question. That said, like these cultures have long histories of written communication. It's not like they don't write; they write a lot. I just don't know about the cultural implications of that. So I don't have a lot to say there. Actually, let me add one thing though. Please. Looking at this, like China, Japan, in the Middle East, time zones from the US, very far, right? So real time doesn't really work that well when people are 12 hours apart to begin with. Like that's why you don't want to be up at 3 a.m. having a conversation with someone else at 3 p.m. Like writing things down in long form is actually a wonderful way to sort of eliminate the disadvantage of time zones, because people can get to things when they have a chance versus having to always be up in the middle of the night. So I think there is some value there, but the deeper cultural thing is something I can't really address.
What I love about Nicholas is he travels around the world, and he's a international business, economics, digital marketing expert. And it's fun listening to what he brings into the conversation, other cultures, the time zone issue that you just mentioned. I think that's the main reason you want to put something in writing, is to accommodate the different time zones. Dan Jaffe, a friend of mine who's a lawyer out of Toronto, big fan of yours, Jason. He appreciates what you're doing. Actually asked the next question that I was going to be asking. For those of you listening to the podcast version of this next week, hey Dan, it's good to see you. What Dan asked is, love how you built Basecamp, and hey, impressive on all levels. Looking back on how you've grown your businesses, if you had to start Basecamp from scratch, what would you do differently?
This is one of those questions where I'm just going to say that luck has so much to do with it that I don't know if I could do it again. And I don't know if the reasons why it worked would work again. I don't know. However, there's some fundamental principles that I believe do apply, which is don't get ahead of yourself. Don't grow too fast. Don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. And one way people do that is by raising a bunch of money early on. we're fans of bootstrapping. We bootstrapped our business, and I would do it the same exact way again. But it means that the road is longer, and there's a little bit more uncertainty in the early days, and it's a little bit more of a struggle in the early days. But I feel like you're building the right skills up, so when if things do work out, you have a bit more resiliency. So I'd still say stay small. Don't put yourself at risk. Meaning, when we built Basecamp, before we built Basecamp, the product, we were a web design company, so we were doing web designs for hire. And that part of our business funded the exploration into making Basecamp the software product. If Basecamp didn't work, we'd still have our consulting website design business. So we were not putting ourselves at risk. We were taking a risk, but not putting ourselves at risk. I'm not a big fan of putting yourself at risk, because that's, I mean, unless you truly absolutely have to, try to do things on the side, try to grow something up slow, see if it gets some traction. And then at some point, it took us about a year and a half, 2 years all in, for Basecamp to clearly be generating more revenue for us than our consulting business. So then we stopped doing the consulting, we focused on Basecamp. So I would still do all of that way. But that said, I think luck plays an enormous part in anyone's success. And a lot of it, almost all of it, we have very little to do with when it comes with luck, where we were born, when we were born. I was lucky that when I was in college, I graduated from college in 96. The internet was just starting basically in 95, 96. Like, I just happened to be there right at the beginning. Like, no one knew what they were doing. Everyone was a completely level playing field. And I benefited from that greatly. I don't know if I could have done it if I started 10 years after that. Who knows? So that's where I'm at.
It's crazy. I would love for you and Dan to meet, because I think you guys have a lot in common. And what you just shared, Jason, you know, when I've been running a lot during this COVID-19 world, trying to
you look great.
Back. Thank you. Thank you. It's been awesome. And I just finished a couple of weeks ago. I've read it years ago, but I just finished listening to Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. I think it's right. And talking about where we're born and the environment, and it's like there are so many different factors that people oftentimes fail to take into consideration when you're born, like you just described, in addition to everything else in life. And I think right now with COVID-19, this is a time to be proactive. This is a time to maybe take a step back and think about how you have your company and your business set up. And that leads me to my next question, Jason, because this is huge. A lot of friends of mine, they have big firms. They've got all their eggs in one basket. One client is their primary income source. That's their primary litigation client. And I happen to know Basecamp set up like we are, just the opposite. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about how you're set up and how that gives you, probably not only you, but your partner David and your team, a better quality of life.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this one. So I wrote a post up. I'll send you the link on this. I forget what it was called, but your company should look more like static. And what I mean by that, actually, I'll grab this link really fast here, see if I can find it. Static company. Let me see. So we have well over 100,000 companies who pay us for our products. Here, I'll just pop this in the private chat. You can share it later. What's important about this is that we don't go after the enterprise market. So the enterprise market is what most software companies love, because they want to land that company that's got 50,000 employees who's going to pay them a fortune and they made it, right?
Like $100 a seat, right?
Yeah, right. $10, whatever it is, millions a year per month, whatever it is. And everyone wants to land that whale. The thing is that if that whale gets off the hook for some reason, because like they're going to be shopping around, if they leave you, you're screwed. I never want to have a customer I cannot afford to lose. So that's where we look at it. So basically, nobody pays us. I'm saying nobody. There's a handful of exceptions from way back when, but the magnitude is relatively small. Pretty much everybody pays us $100 a month to use Basecamp. I don't care if you're IBM. I don't care if you're Joe's car wash on the corner. Basecamp is priced at $100 a month. Unlimited users, unlimited projects, and HEY is priced at $100 a year, unlimited emails, all the whole thing. This way, everyone is the same to us. We're doing things for the benefit of our customer base as a whole, not for those 3 or 4 or 5 whales who basically fund us completely. I know so many entrepreneurs who are scared of their customers. They're scared of their customers because if 2 of them left, 40% of the revenue is gone. So like, are you really even in business for yourself? Are you in business? Like, are you basically a consulting firm for them? I don't want to be beholden to 1 or 2 or 3 or even 10 or 20 major customers. I want to have a broad spectrum of customers who are basically all the same to me. And I don't mean that like in a generic sense, but like that I'm thinking about the customer base as a whole and not someone who wants something from me because they pay me a lot. And what ends up happening is if you have a few customers who end up paying you outsized amount, you end up doing things just for them. And that to the detriment often of your other customers. And then you lose the other guys and now you're even more beholden to the big ones. And it's just a messy situation. So that's our take on it.
I think that's huge. And I think if more professionals designed and built out and, built their practices around that type of concept, I'm telling you guys, the favorite word Lisa and I have is no. I mean, we turn down a lot of business because we know it's going to be a high maintenance, interfere with our quality of life type of thing. And in your books, you talk about this concept, Jason. I would love to see more professionals approach that. You also talk about the concept of JOMO. And I think that is super, super important, especially for all of my hardworking friends out there. Talk to us a little bit about what JOMO is.
Yeah, so JOMO is the joy of missing out. We are all, it feels like we're watching 24-hour news all day. It feels like work has become a 24-hour news ticker. It's like everyone's just paying attention to too many things all the time and afraid of missing out, right? And we found just the opposite to be where bliss really is, which is just like the joy of missing out. Like, I don't need to know everything that's going on. I'll never know everything that's going on. There's no reason to chase these things. Let me focus on a few things that I really care about. And I'll pick up the scattershot, other news occasionally here and there when someone will tell me about something. It's like, I don't need to be on top of everything that's happening. The problem is that technology, I mean, it's good and bad, but technology sort of encourages us and really lures us into an addiction to basically feel like we must know everything all the time. And it's just unhealthy and it's impossible. So we've just kind of let go. And the way that actually filters down to work on a daily basis, at Basecamp, people are responsible for individual projects that we're working on. And that's the only thing they're responsible for. That's the only thing they need to be really good at is the one thing that they're doing. They don't need to know everything else that's going on in the company. They can if they want, but there's no like obligation to, and there's no requirement to. So just focus on the one thing you've got going on for the next few weeks. And that's all we need from you is your best work on the thing that you're doing. And it really frees people's minds up to just focus on that thing and do a really wonderful job at it versus like feeling like they need to be on top of dozens of conversations that are happening all day long at companies. So yeah, missing out's a good thing.
We need to talk about that. And then also in the workplace, we don't need to know everything that's happening in the workplace every single day, but there's something that you and I are taking for granted that a lot of people may not know. And that is something that we've implemented with our firm. And that is the hours that our team is expected to work. Talk to us a little bit about how you've got your work schedule set up with your team at Basecamp, because I think a lot of professional firms can probably roll over to this type of business model, especially working from home in the cloud right now. And the correlation between the number of hours worked by a team member versus maybe the quality of the production received by you and David at Basecamp.
Yeah. So first off, as a general rule, we work 40-hour weeks, roughly 8-hour days, 40-hour weeks. And our point is that that's enough time. It's actually a lot of time. For anyone who doesn't think 8 hours is a lot of time, jump on a flight you wouldn't do it now probably, but from Chicago to London, it's 8 hours. And if you just sit there and don't do anything, and you just sit there and you do that flight, you're going to look at your watch thinking you're like, 7 hours through, and you're going to look, it's like only been like 3. And you're going to look at your watch again in an hour and think 2 more hours has gone by. No, just an hour. 8 hours is a long time. The problem is that most people are distracted all day long. So the time flies. They're busy, but they get nothing done because they're just jumping around, paying attention to things they don't need to. And so anyway, our whole point is that 8 hours is enough. And given that, you've got to make the quality of your hours really count. And the way to do that is to have uninterrupted stretches of time. the quality of an hour is what's important. Not even the quality of the day, it's the quality of the hour. So a 60-minute hour, like a full 60-minute block, is a wonderful hour. But you can also slice 60 minutes in different ways. You can have 4 times 15. That's not such a good hour. 4 times, like that's like multitasking and jumping around. Like if you spend 15 minutes on this and 15 minutes on that, that's not really a great hour. And 2 hours, that's 120 minutes, is an amazing amount of time to do something great. But 6 20-minute blocks, not so good. So, it's about putting together these clumps of 60 minutes that are back to back. So after 3 hours of just working on one thing really well, like you've made so much more progress than most people will make over 3 or 4 days, because their time is chopped into these small little tiny bits. So we're very conscious about that. One of the things is we don't have meetings like we talked about, unless it's a last resort. So that knocks out like the main interrupter during the day. We don't talk in real time that much. So we're not being pulled away by chat messages constantly. Sometimes we do, but not that much. And we also don't share calendars at Basecamp. So nobody can see anyone else's schedule, and you can't take anyone else's time. If you want someone's time, you have to ask them for it. And I don't mean ask by like sending an invite, because that's not asking, that's like a system doing it. But like if I want to meet up with Kristen, who's our head of customer service, and talk to her about something, I have to write her a note saying, hey, Kristen, are you free at Thursday at 3 p.m. To catch up about something? And she can say yes or no, or no, but how about Saturday, or not Saturday, how about Friday at 9? Yeah, that works for me. Like it's a conversation and a negotiation, which might seem like a hassle, but it should be a hassle. It should be hard to take someone's time. Technology's made it too easy to take people's time. And that's why none of us have any of our own time anymore, because everyone else is taking it. So all that said, that's how you make a lot of progress in a short period of time, is you have quality hours. You have a limit, 8-hour days, roughly 40-hour weeks, roughly, maybe it's 45 one week, whatever, and those are the constraints you put on yourself. And then like you really care, because time becomes scarce. And like anything that's scarce, you conserve it, you respect it, you take care of it, because you don't have an unlimited supply. And there you go. And that's how it works.
Well, you also do the same thing with the quality of your team, your employees' lives. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think back in the day, I read about how most of your employees are virtual. This is well before COVID-19, you guys,
right.
Before this was an accepted way of doing business. And I think you also allow them to work to a point on their schedule and their time, right? If they need to take a vacation, then it kind of happens, right? Maybe talk to us a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So we're primarily have always been remote. And that's worked out really well for us. And it also just like, we don't, people are responsible for themselves and the team that they work on. So for example, teams are usually 3 or fewer people on something. And if someone needs to take the afternoon off to pick up their kids or take their kids somewhere or whatever they want to do, like that's fine. You take the time that you need, but you work it out with your team. So, hey guys, I got to run, or I got to take the afternoon off, or I got to take the next few days off, or I need some extra time to myself. You just work it out with your people, with your team, and that's fine. I mean, we have stated vacation. We have 3 weeks off every year. We do every 3 years, we do a 1-month paid sabbatical. We do a lot of things like that. We have to have some structure. So primarily because it's kind of interesting. A little quick insight. I know we're running out of time here.
No, absolutely.
But we used to have this unlimited vacation policy, which sounds really generous, but actually what ends up happening is people take less vacation because they don't know what unlimited means, and it's not truly unlimited. Obviously, you can't take 9 months off a year. So people end up taking less, and that didn't really work out, and it created a lot of anxiety, and people weren't sure if they were doing too much. So we said, like, let's make it 3 weeks. That's clear, plus personal days, plus we've got a sabbatical every 3 years, plus some other personal days that you can take and stuff. And that really helped. But fundamentally, like on a day-to-day basis, you work when you need to, you get your work done. If you put in 6 hours, that's fine. I don't need you to work 8. I don't want you working 10 though. That's kind of, we don't want you to overwork. But if you get your stuff done, or you feel refreshed and you want to go for a swim or whatever, or run early, go ahead. Like, that's cool. There are very few things that need to happen like by 9 p.m. that night that can't happen at 9 a.m. the next morning. So we just kind of don't push people too hard. And then that's why half of our company's been with us for 6 or 7 years now. We've got, I think, close to a dozen people have been with us for 10 or more years, which is super rare in our industry. And it's because we don't burn people out. We give them a great environment. give them a lot of control over their own work, a lot of autonomy and agency, and challenge them intellectually. And people like that, and they want to be around creative people who are fair.
I would love to see that happen more often in the legal industry, the accounting industry, medical industry, where you let your trust, if you trust your team, your employees, or there's that trust level, like what you've been talking about, then if someone needs to take some time and go for a run or spend time at their son's soccer game, I'll tell you what, they'll hit the ground running a lot harder with a mind that's much more open to getting the results that you're looking for the next morning. The sun's come. Let me wrap things up, if you don't mind, with a question from someone who I'm a big fan of. Alicia Kinchlow is a lawyer out of Philadelphia. Jason, she's awesome. And she asked, for those of you listening to the podcast next week, you have addressed project management and email communication. What's the next thing you will rework? She's an entrepreneur also, Jason. So that's the way Alicia's mind works.
She's asking way too much, too much, because we're like just right in the middle of solving the email. We've been doing the project management thing for 16 years. We're doing a new version of Basecamp next year, all new version. So we're excited about that. Hey, that just came out, is the personal version of Hey. We're going to release in a couple months Hey for Work, which is going to be for entire companies.
What's going to be the big difference between the two?
Well, you'll be able to collaborate on emails together. You'll be able to have back channel conversations about email threads without the recipient getting these conversations. There's a whole bunch of really interesting things you can do around that, and it'll be multi-user and everything. So we got that on our plates. Then we're going to do a family version of Hey for family plans, and we've got a whole bunch of new stuff for Hey. So right now, I don't have any room for anything other than project management and email, but there's a lot of runway here, a lot of room for a bunch more ideas around Hey. We're going to take Hey in some really unusual directions next year that people wouldn't typically think of as like email territory, but we think of it as a similar thing. So we're going to do some fun stuff. So there's a lot of fun stuff coming. 2021 is going to be, hopefully for everyone, a lot better than 2020. And hopefully for us, it's going to be a great year for doing a lot of really fun projects. So that's enough. That's enough for us.
You've got from one dad to another, you've got two young projects running around the house right now.
That's right. Yeah.
And I happen to know that, family and having time away from the office is super important to you, which I highly recommend. That's been our key to success in keeping our family together and our sanity for the last 34 years of practicing law, Jason. So what I want to do is respect your time. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for joining us. And please, share out the recorded version of the show. The podcast will drop next week. Jason, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate all you're doing and the insight that you're sharing. And I love cross-pollinating other industries and professions with these approaches. I think nothing but good things will come out of it. If anyone is listening, they're not watching today's live video, and they want to reach out, get in touch with you, grab Basecamp, sign up for Hey. They're in the middle of a long run right now on the treadmill. What's the best way for them to reach out and take that next step?
Sure. So Basecamp is at basecamp.com. That's an easy one. Hey is HEY.com. Check that out. And you can get me on Twitter too. I primarily social media. I'm pretty much always only on Twitter. This is Jason Fried, Fried. You can get me there. You can also email me, jason@hey.com. You can get right to me that way. And I try to get back to everybody I can. So if you have any questions, maybe something you wanted to ask that didn't get asked or ran out of time or something that comes to you, hit me up and I'll try to share as much as I can. And Mitch, I loved being here. It's great to talk to you again. It's been a while and hope to see you in person one of these days.
Absolutely. We can probably make that happen. So Jason Fried of Basecamp and hey.com. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, you guys. Make it a masterpiece. Good night, everyone.
Thanks.